So, Surangama Sutra today. Before the actual teaching, I would like to address a few things. And first of all is to have a cherishing mind when you are listening to the Dharma. Because I noticed that nowadays it is rather quite easy for people to receive the Dharma. People who are listening over here, who are present in the shrine hall, who are listening through other means of methods, you may feel that it's quite easy to receive the Dharma. I think people tend to feel that it's rather quite a habitual pattern, that people would feel that it's easy, therefore then they don't think that it's important, they don't think that it's something that's very special. But if you were to have such kind of mentality, then you wouldn't take or attach great importance to the teaching anymore. So sometimes I would reflect back on at the time when my generation just came to Larongar, and compared to the situation that you are having now, compared to the kind of environment that you have now to study, I think there's a great difference. When I first came to Larongar, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have roads, and we had to walk all the way from the county and walk to Larongar, which is about 20 to 30, in fact 30 kilometers or so. And we didn't even have electricity, so we had to use lanterns and lamps. And despite these kinds of difficulties, our generations of Dharma practitioners were very diligent. We didn't sleep much. We didn't get distracted during the day. We barely had enough food. We only eat some tsampa, and that is the barley flour. Unlike how nowadays people would be very picky, saying that, oh, this doesn't taste good, that one doesn't taste good. I think compared to our generation, it's very different in terms of how practitioners are. When I was studying at in my early days when I was studying in Larongar, I would then boil 1 pot of water and use half of the water until noontime. So in the morning as breakfast, I will have some tsampa flour, and then with some hot water, and then during the day I will use the water to make some tea, and then for lunch is also tsampa, and then dinner also tsampa. We didn't have enough firewoods. We have to then carry the firewoods to our little huts. So since 1985, since the beginning of Larongar Institute, in fact, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have roads, we didn't have enough food. But everyone was very diligent and really cherished the opportunity of listening to the Dharma, which differs a lot to how people listen to the Dharma now. Because I see how people listen to the Dharma, they're very distracted. Sometimes they would chat underneath the class, or behind the Dharma teacher. Sometimes they would even doze off. But I would truly advise you, whenever you're listening to the Dharma, if your mind is completely focused and placed on the Dharma teaching, your afflictions and everything will then disperse. And so I think it's quite important to remain a sense of enthusiasm instead of just trying to get through the day. So this kind of mentality is really quite important. So either you choose to listen to the Dharma wholeheartedly, or just might as well do not listen to it at all. Otherwise, I think you won't be able to gain benefit. If you were to have a great veneration towards Dharma and cherish the opportunity, then you will be able to receive the blessings and great benefits of the Dharma that is gained through the previous masters. Now, let's talk about the actual teaching. We are going to talk about the 7 attempts of searching for the mind, which is quite famous and very renowned in the teaching of Surangama Sutra. In the Vajrayana teaching, we often talk about the coming and going of the mind, searching for the coming, abiding, and going of the mind. Over here, the teaching talks about whether the mind is outside, inside, within the body faculty or organs, or somewhere else. In fact, this ways of searching for the mind is very similar to the Vajrayana teaching. Therefore, I myself really think the Surangama Sutra should be called rather, or belong to the Tantra aspect that belongs to the Vajrayana. And you may ask, why is it called the Surangama Sutra rather than Surangama Tantra then? I think it is because of the time. At that era, the translators usually would translate the tantras sometimes as sutras as well, such as the Manjushri Nama Gosha Tantra. In fact, in Chinese it is translated as sutra. There are many cases like that. In Japan, there is also another teaching. It is the Vajra Not Sutra, which is also translated as the Tantra in Tibetan. So many of the Tantras, when it was translated, the title is translated into Sutra rather than Tantra. Another reason is that around the beginning of 8th century, which is after 700 CE, when the translator brought this sutra to, when Paramiti brought this sutra to mainland China, it was rather through a very secretive way. And compare that history to Bharatana's history. When Bharatana went to India to study translation, and during that time, when he was studying translation, he studied under Hwarge Sangye, who was a great Ngapka. And at that time, he taught Bharatana to study the Sutrayana teachings from other great masters. And then in the evening, then you can come to me and I'll give you teachings of the secretive tantras. Because our king places great importance to the tantra, and this profound teaching of tantra cannot be spread outside. Once I am found and caught right-handed that I'm giving you teaching of Tantrayana, then it will bring great difficulty to me and create obstacles for you as well when you were to leave the country. Therefore, Vajrayana then studied under different panditas, the great scholars and great masters, and study the Sutrayana, especially in terms of cause and duration and so on. And then in the evening, he studied under the great Mahasiddhis, the great Vidyadharas of Tantrayana, such as Hwagi and he received lots of the Tantra teachings that belongs to the mind part of the Tantrayana teachings. And he wanted to take back 18 volumes of the Tantrayana teachings. But he was told that it is definitely not going to work. Therefore, Hwagi gave him the method, saying that you should use the goat's milk to write on the white silk, and then afterwards, once it dries, you can take this silk to your country, and then you should use the smoke to smoke the silk, and then at that time all the words will appear, and then you'll be able to read it again. And this part of the history and all the 18 volumes of the mind sections of Tantrayana teachings are now found in Tibetan plateau, and that were brought back by Vajrayana and translated by him as well. And Tumi Sambuddha also, he translated 21 different kinds of teachings as well. As you know that in the Tantrayana, it has in the Ati, it has the mind, the realm, and the different sections. So once after Vajrayana brought back all the teachings to Tibet, at that time, after he brought back those volumes, back in India, lots of inauspicious signs happen in India. Such as the iron doors would fall off and so on. But the people didn't know what happened. And later on, after a long period of time, the people got to know that Vajrayana took away lots of the Tantrayana teachings to Tibet. So lots of things happened, and lots of the histories and stories happened after the teachings were brought back by Vajrayana. So around the similar period of time, then in fact afterwards, in the 8th century, Surangama Sutra could be considered as a Tantrayana teachings, especially in India. It was kept in deep secret. That is why Paramiti kept it in very secretive ways and tried to smuggle it out of the border. And failed for the first 2 times until he cut open his arm and hid the sutra inside his arm. So the Surangama Sutra, in fact, in Nalanda, it belongs to the empowerment section, which means the Tantrayana section. And in the Tripitaka, right now, the Taisho Tripitaka or the Dajun Tripitaka, it also categorized the Surangama Sutra as the Tantrayana under the Tantrayana classification, especially when it comes to the mantra and so on, all of these. So in this sutra, it has lots of the Vajrayana secretive pith instructions as well as the enlightenment or realizations that is attained through the practice of the mantras. In the great masters in the great master's biography in Song Dynasty. In fact, there was someone, a monk's name who's Cheng Hui, and Cheng Hui received this teaching of this mantra, and he stayed in mountain retreat for a long period of time, and just simply and wholeheartedly practice on this mantra. That is the Surangama Sutra. And then, after a long period of time of practice, a celestial being came to him and said that in fact this world is under great chaos, and you should take the responsibility to propagate the correct Dharma and subjugate the heretics. So the celestial being supplicated the monk and asked him to propagate the correct Dharma. And so he did. The monk then went down the mountain and went to a temple. And then the heretics came to this temple. And then these heretics challenged the monk, saying that, look at what I can do through my practice in the religion that is other than Buddhism. So he built this ladder that is made of blades, and then he stepped onto the blade-made ladder without any harm to his feet or anything. So he manifested this kind of numinous penetration. Then the Master Cheng Hui, the monk, said that not only I can do that, I can build a much higher ladder than yours. So he built this blade-made ladder that is much higher than the one that is made by the heretics before, and stepped onto those ladders and walked on the ladders bare feet, but without any pain or bleed. Rather, he walked on it with great ease, just as if he was walking on the flat ground. Also, he put his hands into the burning, the boiling hot oil and into the burning fire, and walking on the fire and chewing the raw iron. And he made lots of those miraculous actions, but nothing harmful happened to him. And after witnessing such, the heretics got really scared off and run off. And the emperor got to know this miraculous penetration that is attained by this monk, so he gifted this monk a rare-colored, beautiful robe, also a name that is the country protector, the Tripitaka master of country protector. So you can see the Surangama Sutra and Surangama mantra is something that could inspire enlightenment, and it is something that people would practice and attain Vajrayana level of realization, such as Rinpoche and so on. For example, Padmasambhava, who can then subjugate all the different kind of maras without any kind of deliberate effort, rather quite at ease. Also, Mipa Rinpoche stated that the Nyingma Pass has such kind of a special training that is very different than the other different schools. So Surangama Sutra is a very supreme and real rare treasure and gem of the Sutrayana teachings that is currently propagated in mainland. And the teachings that is within the Surangama Sutra, I think there are the pith instructions, there are the pointing out instructions, and the instructions of recognizing one's own mind. So all these kind of hidden treasures are included in the Surangama Sutra. I think you should take it as take this teaching very seriously and try to try to see how the Surangama Sutra has all the hidden teachings in it. I really think when you study the Vimalakirti Sutra and the Sixth Patriarch's Platform Sutra, as well as the Surangama Sutra, then your understanding of Vajrayana teaching would deepen. Or if you don't study the Vajrayana teachings, you should be able to understand from a different perspective of the Vajrayana teaching. And I think that lots of the teachings within is very similar to the ones that's taught in the Illuminous Essence composed by Mipa Rinpoche, and I think lots of the peace instructions are included in these sutras. Even if you cannot find these kind of secretive teachings that's hidden, at least you won't find anything that is in contradiction with one another. In fact, in my previous book on the question and answers of Vajrayana, I stated that it is the best to be open to different kinds of teachings. Otherwise, if you were to only stick with what you know, then you won't have an open heart and you won't be exposed to new ideas and new philosophies. And that would be such a loss for yourself, really. So you should have you should have a rather a neutral attitude when it comes to receiving different kinds of teachings, rather than with a biased kind of idea. I think I'm too elaborated at the beginning. So Surangama Sutra. Last time I think we stopped at the place where Ananda met the Matangi woman, and he encountered this tiny obstacle, and then through the power of the Buddha and the mantra, as well as the help of Manjushri, Ananda and the Matangi woman all were brought to the Buddha, but the Buddha did not scold him in front of everyone. Rather, he asked Ananda, saying that, "Why did you get ordained in front of me?" So why? And then Ananda, I think he belongs to one of those Lookism people. He said that, "Oh, because you look so beautiful, I think the Buddha looked really beautiful. That's why I want to get ordained." So at that time, he didn't really have any mind of renunciation or bodhicitta. He didn't have any of those. But he only were attracted to the physical appearance of the Buddha. So Ananda said that, "Because I saw that you're so beautiful, therefore I want to get ordained and follow you." And then the Buddha said that, "Well, so how did you perceive my beauty?" The Buddha asked. And then Ananda said that, "Well, because through my eyes and my mind. Through my eyes I can see and my mind knows." And then the Buddha continued to ask, saying that, "So where is your mind?" And Ananda started saying that, "Well, mind is within my body, just as how..." And then the Buddha also asked, "Where's your eye?" Ananda said that, "Just as how your beautiful eyes are on your face, my eyes are on my face." So he answered in such a way. So let's continue with our class today. So the Buddha asked, "Now as you sit in this hall, where do you see Jetavana Park?" Where do you see the Jata grove? The Buddha asked. So why don't you look at Jata grove? If you were to remember, in fact, this grove was offered by the prince. And then the Buddha started setting the stage for the following questions. There are the 7 attempts of searching for the mind. And these are the 7 peace instructions given by the Buddha. In fact, these 7 are very famous and very well known and renowned by the previous masters in the history. Some great masters, they introduced in the way that these 7 questions are step by step, layers by layers, such as Master Jin Jian, and he said, each of the questions, in fact, follows each of the attachment of Ananda, and then the Buddha would break each of the attachment of Ananda. So it continuously break all the attachments of Ananda. So Ananda continues to present his attachment, and the Buddha continuously to break them. And these are the peace instructions given by the Buddha. Anyhow, the Buddha asked Ananda, saying that now you're sitting in this hall of teaching. So at this moment, where do you see the Jatamana Park? And Ananda replied, saying, World honored one, this great hall is in Jatamana Park, which is therefore outside of the hall. In fact, this great hall is inside of the Jata Grove. The Jata Grove is a beautiful big park full of forests and so on. So we said that the Jatamana Park is outside of our teaching hall. And then at that time, the Buddha continued to ask Ananda, saying that, well, what do you see first in this teaching hall then? So since you're sitting inside the hall, what are you seeing? What is it that you're looking at first in this hall? And then Ananda replied, saying that, World honored one, in this hall I see first the Tathagata, because the Tathagata is sitting on a high throne and then really beautifully sitting there. And then I also see the assembly. And only when I look outside do I see the park. So we can imagine the great assembly hall actually has doors and windows, and then the assembly and the Tathagata are all inside the hall. So through the doors and windows, and then Ananda would be able to see the park outside of the trees and so on. Sometimes I think to myself, if a mundane being were to have such kind of a conversation with a great master, I think the modern people won't cherish such kind of opportunity. To have such an opportunity to question and to have such an opportunity to have a question and answers, I think it's such a precious opportunity. Especially nowadays, we've been collecting lots of the videos and audios of Phuntsogren Rinpoche. And sometimes I found lots of the audio recordings of how people questioned Phuntsogren Rinpoche, and sometimes I feel that Phuntsogren Rinpoche At the time, the way that we perceive Ponso Rinpoche's answer is rather sometimes okay, sometimes good. But now when we hear this, in fact, it is quite precious and really wonderful. Therefore, it's important to keep those records. Even if people of this generation won't be able to receive the full benefit of those recordings, at least it will benefit the next generation and so on. So I feel it's really important to keep record of the recordings of the great masters, because it will be of great benefit to others. The previous reincarnation of Ponso Rinpoche, who is the Lampa, he said that after my present life, in my next lifetime, in fact, my teaching will be propagated even much more further than my present lifetime. All the way from Nepal to mainland China, the Dharma will be widely propagated. And this was written in the concluding sentence of a terma. So Ponso Rinpoche, as we can see nowadays, all the way from India, in fact, surpass Nepal, all the way from India to the West. I think the teachings of Ponso Rinpoche are placed with great importance and cherishment. There are people who had lots of devotion towards Ponso Rinpoche. Not only for the ones who've met Ponso Rinpoche, there are people who never met him but had a great devotion towards him as well. So for us, the next generation of Ponso Rinpoche, the disciples of Ponso Rinpoche, by repaying his kindness, we should try our best to preserve all these kind of teachings given by Ponso Rinpoche. Some of the questions and answers by Ponso Rinpoche, I feel that he addressed the confusions and questions of lots of sentient beings. In fact, his answers to the questions are not only to one particular sentient beings, but it is very enlightening and inspiring to many people's confusions. So, coming back to the question and answer of Buddha and Ananda, we'll be able to see that the Ananda, in fact, address or make such kind of questions to the Buddha, or have this question and answer sessions with the Buddha, is not only representing himself. Rather, he represents all different kinds of people, different groups of people. Just as Ananda represents many people's mentality and their way of looking at this world. And this really represents the Buddha's omniscient power of tame sentient beings and teach sentient beings. So the Buddha said that, what do you see first in this hall? And then Ananda said, the first thing I see is you, Tathagata, and then the assembly, and then only when I look outside do I see the park. Over here, Ananda actually represents the mind. So now let's look at how this analogy goes at the first question. The assembly is an analogy of the organs within the body, and the great hall is the body, and the park is the external world, something that is external than our body. And the doors and windows represent the different faculties. The first attempt of finding the mind is attempt of finding the mind from within the body. So Ananda said that the first one I see is you, the Tathagata, and then I see the assembly, and then I see outside of the park. Outside of the great hall, that is the park. And then the Buddha asked, when you see the park, what caused you to do so? What is it that you rely upon so that you can see the park?
以什么来见外面的你说是外面的泥园呢？我们先看到里面的，然后就再见到外面。那见到外面的话呢，你用什么
You
来
see inside the hall first, and then you see outside the hall. But then what is it that caused you to see outside of the hall? What caused you to see the park? And then Ananda replied, it is because the doors and windows are open. Because they are open, I think our doors and windows are closed because it's a bit cold. And on our doors it says that please close the door behind you. In the summer, sometimes we would keep the windows and doors open because it would get stuffy. But in the winter, we close them. But since we have windows, we can still see outside. Anyhow, Ananda at that time replied, it is because the doors and windows are open so that he could see the park outside, although he is sitting inside the hall. He said, I can see outside very clearly. Originally, I wanted to show you a picture. A picture of the view from my retreat hut. I think sometimes if the scenery is too beautiful, then it's very difficult to maintain my mind within the retreat, because my mind would go outside of the hut and then go to the external scenery. So I think it's probably the best to have the retreat hut in some place that doesn't have a beautiful scenery. Otherwise, if it's too beautiful, it could be a distraction. So through the doors and the windows, Ananda could see outside of the hall and see the park. If you were to remember, in fact, the previous section of how the Buddha extended his golden-hued arm and touched Ananda's head with his hand, it in fact should be moved to here according to, in fact, compose then making adjustment of the passage according to the Chinese version. But the English version is correct. So the Buddha then extended his golden-hued arm and touched Ananda's head with his hand, and saying that there is a samadhi called all-embracing supreme Surangama. This is the name of the samadhi. And this samadhi is a great way through which all Buddhas in the 10 directions attained to the wondrous and majestic path. The Buddhas from 10 directions attained the wondrous majestic path. So this is quite a majestic and really beautiful path, a beautiful way. And that's the way that the Buddhas from 10 directions attained realization. And this kind of path is the samadhi called all-embracing supreme Surangama. And that's the door and path of all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. Therefore, you should listen attentively, Ananda. I will now expound this Dharma to you. Some people feel that it's quite sudden. Why would the Buddha extend his golden hued arm and touch Ananda's head over here? It doesn't make sense. Previously, in fact, we've already talked about it. The Surangama Sutra got altered in terms of its orders. Wei-Quan and Zi-Chue at the time, they expressed their idea, their opinion, saying that why the Buddha blessed Ananda on his head then. The Buddha did not scold Ananda at the beginning when Ananda made a mistake, when Ananda encountered an obstacle. Rather, he over here extended his arm and then blessed Ananda. Why is that? In fact, there are 3 reasons. That is according to Master Zixuan. The first reason is to console him, to comfort Ananda. Because Ananda may be feeling still a little bit nervous and still holding on to his mistake, although he didn't break his precept. But at that time, he probably felt something. He probably still felt quite nervous at the time. So he consoled him. The Buddha consoled Ananda at that time. And the second one is to then make sure that Ananda would listen attentively. And thirdly is making sure that Ananda knows the Buddha's teaching at the time is very genuine and it is not deceptive. So the Buddha started to expound his teaching. After being blessed by the Buddha in such a gentle way, Ananda at that time probably felt much more relaxed. They felt that, I think this is what I felt, what I was grasping onto is probably not so important anymore, and I should then listen attentively. So from here,
这个教言呢，就开始讲了，那么就是现在把这段话带回来了以后的话呢，就我们下面就开始讲那个，然后佛陀就那个阿难呢，就是不断的在佛面前进行顶礼以后。
Ananda prostrated himself at the Buddha's feet and knelt to receive the holy instruction. The Buddha said that if you are right, that while sitting in this hall, you see the park outside through open doors and windows, it would be possible for someone sitting here to see only things outside without seeing the Buddha within. So you can probably see the Jeta Grove.
那这样的话呢，就是他就继续问啊，就是那会不会也有一些众生的话呢？虽然就是人的这个身体呢，就是在这个讲堂当中。
Since you are sitting here and you can see the Jeta Grove, do you think there would be also sentient beings who are sitting in this grove, but they cannot see the Tathagata and they cannot see who's outside of what's outside of the hall, the great hall. I think this is quite a Zen koan style, isn't it? The Buddha said that since you said that you first see me and then see the assembly and then see the outside, then can I ask you a question? Is it also possible that maybe someone else is also sitting here, but they cannot see me, cannot see assembly, and they can only see outside? Do you think that's possible? And then Ananda replied, I think for a long period of time, we will be having this kind of teachings of the questions and answers between Ananda and Buddha. You should pay close attention because you never know if you were to get enlightened. And if you have, and you should place yourself in Ananda's shoe and try to contemplate seeing that and thinking about how you would answer the questions posed by the Buddha. In fact, I think Ananda represent us, represent people who are of modern studies background. As nowadays modern people or mundane people would grasp onto, it's either outside or inside, it's neither good or bad. There's just very definitive right and wrongs, and they would grasp onto one thing and not the other. So that's something that how mundane people would grasp onto. And once they have something to grasp onto, they would believe that it is definitely right. Especially for Theravada practitioners, and they pay close attention to this. To Chittamatra school, the mind-only school, they have a rather different idea and different kind of mentality, where they would recognize how external phenomena is mind. But Ananda, as a Shravaka, then he holds onto solidity much more than the mind-only schools. So Ananda replies, and his replies are very much coincide with lots of the mundane beings. And I think the mundane beings are still far away from what Ananda was. Are still quite far away from the level of Ananda, because Ananda is quite proficient in listening and contemplation. I really hope that Buddhists, although maybe you're not as good as Ananda, but at least do not dwell in the mundane and materialistic world. Especially for the monastics and for the students over here, I really hope that you do not dwell in the world of TikTok and different kinds of software like that. Do not make a smile and make different kinds of short clips, because it is really meaningless. For people with some level of practice, for people with some levels of contemplation, you'll be able to recognize how shallow those kinds of medias are. So my advice are for the practitioners, because for non-practitioners, they really have no other ways to spend their time. They are only looking for, entertainment. After a little while, I think, especially during our annual retreat time, I really hope that you seize the time to retreat rather than wasting your time on internet, on cell phones. I know that lots of mundane beings would have habitual patterns, but as Buddhist practitioners, if you were to dwell in the mundane world in such a way, I think you are still not completely immersed in the spirituality path. You're still quite attached to the mundane and materialistic world. There are people in this world. In fact, they have the value of reading, and they really enjoy studying knowledge and so on. And they have different kind of pursuits of spiritual path, and you can talk to them about different kinds of spiritual aspect and even even consciousness and mind. So people with higher value, they won't get distracted with the flood of junk information. Anyhow, over here, Ananda, as a representative of mundane being, although Ananda is definitely not a mundane being, such as mundane beings in fact have lots of wrong views and lots of confusions and doubts. And those kind of wrong views are cut off by the sharp weapon that is the Surangama Sutra. Those of you who study Surangama Sutra, maybe at the beginning of it, you are very distracted, but later on, with the progress of Surangama Sutra, maybe you will be able to cut off lots of your distractions and lots of your conflictions. As Buddhists, as Buddhist practitioners, do not get too distracted. You should have certain levels of you should have certain levels of requirement for yourself. You should use right mindfulness to watch out your lifestyle and watch your mind. Otherwise, when your mind gets into the habitual pattern, then it's very difficult to tame it because our mind is very naughty, just as a naughty child. If your mind is very accustomed to get distracted, then it's very difficult to get it back. And just as how the parents cannot cannot tame their child anymore. So should not get accustomed to the habitual patterns. I see lots of lamas and jumos who do not use their cell phones because of the requirements. In fact, I don't really require you of not using the cell phone, but my requirement is to be more self-aware and to be more self-responsible, to take responsibility for your own actions, because I won't be able to stand beside you and require you to do so and not to do so. Anyhow, over here, Ananda replied, saying that one cannot see the grove and stream outside without seeing the Buddha here. So Ananda said that is not possible, because how is it possible that people would stay in this hall and not see you? Because look at you, how beautiful you are. How could people do not see you but only see outside? That's not possible. Ananda's answer is very clear, saying that it's not possible. And then Ananda started saying that, well, Ananda,
然后佛陀说：“阿难呐，就是那你也是一样的，就是你的这个心呐，你也知道。”
Ananda, it is the same with you. If your mind is not deluded, it will be clear knowing about all this. It is clear and knowing. That is the characteristic of mind. In fact, the mind is not like the inanimate object. Mind is luminous. It is not the ones that's as an inanimate object, such as the sun or as a lamp. It's not like that at all. It is luminous at the same time clearly knowing. So it is luminous and knowing. And this kind of mind, this kind of clear knowing and luminous mind is the characteristic of all sentient beings.
了知这个所有的这个身内啊，就是内身，就是因为心有什么样的特点呢？
However, if your knowing mind was really in your body, you should first be clear about everything inside it.
所以呢，里面
Just
是能
as,
看得到
well,
的。
Ananda, you
那
have
么里面
eyes,
的
you
看
have
不到，
mind,
只
then
是
you'll
看
be
到
able
外
to
面是不
see
可能的，就是那你不
the
可能这样
inside as well
那
as
同样的
outside,
心也是
isn't it?
它是明了的东西。
So
它
if
如果
your
是明了的
mind,
东西，
since
像
it
它
is
的这个
luminous as
有
well
着
as
无情不
clear
一样的话呢，
knowing,
就是它在哪里的时候可能看不到别的，
it is
看不
not
到自己这样。
inanimate,
但是
it
心
is
是明
not
了的，它
something
的特
that
点是明了
could
的。
only
它
see
既然是明
see
了
the
的，
outside but
如
not
果是这
inside,
个心呢，
but
就
not
是在身
itself.
体里面的话
In
呢，它
fact,
一定会
the
是先
mind,
就是
since
看
it
到
is
了这个身体里面的
since
这个
as
所有的
Ananda,
这
as
些
what you
所有
said
的
is
东
that
西啊，
it's
就是它如
inside
果
the
在身
body,
里的话呢，
then
这
the
个
mind
心
should
就
be
是不
able
能
to
它分离，
clearly
就是
knows
就什
what
么都看不
happens
到。
inside
那
the
在那
body,
个时候
isn't
啊
it?
看不到不可能嘛，就这样的。那么
Just as the
但是
analogy
呢，就
goes,
是难
how
道有一
Ananda
些众
stays
生
in the
呢，
hall,
会
sees what's
难道
inside
有
the
一些
hall
众
and
生呢，
sees
就
what's
是
outside
先
the
就是
hall as
见到
well,
这个
isn't
身
it?
状，回来
So
呢，
if the mind was
就是
inside,
这
if
个
the mind was inside the
能
body,
贯这个
then
外
your
部的
mind
有
would
没有这种
clearly
情况？
knows
它
what
是这一
happens
种
inside the
范
body
围
in the
呢，就是
organs
难
and
道
so
有一些
on.
众生的话呢，就是真的
So
是先就是把这个身体里面的这个所有的内脏啊，就是这些东西
you
看得
should
清清楚楚。
therefore see
然
everything
后
in your
呢，
body
就是再
before
看
seeing
到
things
这个
outside
外面
it.
的，因为阿难的
Just
话呢，
as
他就
Ananda sees
先
what's
就是看
inside
到
the
里面
the
的这个
hall
诸
and
人啊、
then
佛陀啊
outside
这
of
些，
the hall,
然后
isn't
呢就是
it?
看到外面
He
的。那
sees
其实
the
阿难跟心呢，就是
Tathagata and
也
then
是一样的，
assembly
阿难
inside
也
the
是有
hall,
这
isn't
个
it?
心，心
Just
也是有
as
这个
Ananda,
觉
the
的。如
mind,
果是真正的
since
身体
it
里面
is
的话呢，
clear
像
knowing
你
and
坐在里面，就
luminous,
是先看里
then
面，
it
然后
should
先
be
看
able
外
to
面，然后
see
你也
what's
是
inside the
啊，心
body.
也是
Since
应该先
Ananda,
看
what
到
you
这
said
个，
is
然
that
后
the
再往
mind
里
is
看到。
inside the body,
但实际上的话呢，就是这
then
个总不能啊，就
you
是
should
这
be
个
able to see
真实
your
实际情况的话呢，就是实际上
heart,
是这样的，
liver,
就是
spleen,
纵然不
and
能这个
stomach.
心呢，就是见这个这个心呢，就是它内在的这个心脏也好、肝也好、脾也好、胃也好，这些的是就是见
All
不
of
到
these kind of
就是这
organs,
些阴暗的，就是比
in
较
fact,
隐秘的
we
这
cannot
些
see
内
it.
脏呢，就是见不到的。就还有呢，就是我们的这个指甲啊，就是指甲的这个生
At
长、
least
头发
you
的
should
这
be
个生
clear
长，
about your
还有这个
growing
筋
nails
筋
and
络啊、脉
hair,
的这个
about
动
that
摇啊
which
等
moves
等，就是
along
这
your
些的话呢，
nerves and the
按理来
pulsing
讲
of
是
your
成
veins.
和明了，就是成
Well,
应该按理
if
来
your
讲的
mind
话
is within
都
your
都
body,
应该明了的。
then
但如何
why
不
are
知
you
道？
not
为什么
clear
不知
about
道？
all
如
these?
果你的心，你不是认为是心在里面的，如果是心在里面的话呢，就
Since
像阿
you
难在里
think
面
the
一样
mind is
就
within
全
your
部都
body,
见到。但
just
实际
as
上呢，
Ananda
实
is
际上是什
within
么
the
呢？
hall,
就是心就是不单就是
then the
不能
mind
见
should
到
be
外
able
面
to
的
see all the
内
different
脏，如果
organs
心
within
在
the
内脏，
body,
比
isn't
如说
it?
心脏里面或在大脑里面的话呢，那应该就是
If
它
the
把这
mind
个
is within
大
the
脑里面的
brain,
话呢，大
if
脑
the
的这个
mind
所有
is
的这个
within the
几百个亿
heart,
的那种神经这个系统的话
then
呢，全部都应该
the
见得到
mind
的。
should
如
be
果是
able
它在
to
我们这个所
clearly
说的这个
knows
我
all
们的这
the
个心脏里面的话
billions
呢，
of
那这个
neurons
这个
within
身
your
体里
brain
面的
cells,
这个
isn't
所有
it?
的这个五脏六腑啊，
And
就
if
全
your
部都是应
mind
该都
is within
见
your
得到的。
body, within
但
the
实际
cell
上
of
的话呢，
body,
就是
you'll
它
be
不但不见
you
这些，
should be
甚至
able
我
to
们的大
clearly
家都容易就是
know
看
and
到
see
的，
your
比如说
heart
这
and
个
liver
毛
and
发也
spleen
好，
and
指
all
甲也
these
好，
kind
整
of
个身体
organs.
的经络也好，
Or at
这些的
least
话
you
呢，
should
就
be able
是
to
一般容易
clearly
看到的这些的话呢，
seeing
都
or
这个心
knowing
呢，就是
about
从
the
外面见
growing
的。如果
nails
它
and
在身体
hair.
里面的话呢，
But
不管
this
是哪一个部
clearly
位，
knowing
它应
mind
该
had
这
never
种
really
不一样。
see all this kind of
以前的
happenings.
学其他这个经论的人，
I
他可
think
能没有遇
people
到过，
who
这次也是可能第一次这个
study
遇到
different
的
kind of
这个大家
sutras,
也应
you
该
probably
它
never
的这个
really
思维都是
study,
不一样的。
you probably feel a little bit
那么就是，那么就是最
different
后的话
about
呢，就
this
是逼
kind
不
of
能治
teaching,
啊，就是云和
isn't
之
it?
外，就是那么最后结果是什么呢？就是那么这个心呢，就是
Therefore,
不止这个内
your
内在的
contention
这
that
个身体里
your
面的所
knowing
有的
mind
这
is
些
inside your
经络
body
也好，
is
还有
groundless.
这个经络也好，就这些都是不止的。那就怎么
since your mind doesn't know what's inside the body.
内在的就是不
Then
能知道，就是这样的话，那就是怎么知道外？所以说呢，就是你应该要知啊，就是这个阿难你
So
应该要知，你所说的这个
Ananda,
心呐，就是明
you should know
什么这个明了的这颗心呐，住在这个身体内呢，就是实际
this
上是
knowing
不是
mind
吧
inside your body is
所以
groundless.
这个方面
It
的
is
话呢
wrong.
我们这个大多数的很多人呢，可能是认为
I
呢
think
就是
majority
这
of
个
you
我们的这个心呢，就是实际上是在里面
probably feel that
在
your
在
mind
这个
is
身体
within
当
your
中
body,
就
isn't
像一些
it?
现代的一些科学家，就是他们都经常
Especially the
认
modern
为是这
scientists,
个
they
心呢，就是
usually
在
would
大
say
脑
that
当
the
中
mind is
包括
within
有一
the
些这
brain.
个我们这个眼睛就是看到的，就是
whatever, for example, through our eyes, we will be able to perceive the image through such kind of light. Then it transforms into information, and the information goes through different neurons. It becomes chemical and electronic signals, and then it would then becomes a picture through different calculations of the brain cells. But if the mind is within your brain, then your mind should be able to also see and know what happens in the different neurons in your brain. I think majority of people feel or think in such a way. According to Master O.E., he said that the majority of beings consider that the mind is within the body. Also, according to the Western scientists, they also consider that the mind is within the brain. Whenever they talk about, I need to think about it, and then they would point at their brain and say that I need to think about it, they would grasp onto how the mind stays within the head. And some people would say that, I'm not feeling well, and I'm feeling hurt. And then they would point at their heart. And when they feel happy, and then they would say that, I'm so happy. My heart is at ease. And they would say it in such a way. But if your mind is within your brain or your heart or in any places of the body, since the mind is luminous and is clear knowing, then if the mind resides within any part of your body, why doesn't the mind know what happens within your body at all? So that's the first pointing out instruction. Originally, I wanted to finish all the 7 pith instructions, but I think it's not possible. Maybe a few more. So it's not possible for the mind to reside within the body. And then Ananda bowed and said, with lots of veneration, although he continuously to ask the Buddha. But Ananda did not get upset by getting refuted by the Buddha. He, in fact, was still very respectful towards the Buddha. And he said that after hearing the Buddha's Dharma voice, I now understand that my mind is really outside of my body. So now I know. I know that it's not inside of my body. I'm very clear about how my mind is really outside of my body. Why is that? Just as the light, just as a lamp that could light up everything in a room before the courtyard outside through the open door. So through the door, through the open window, then the light could be able to light up everything on the outside. If I do not see what is in my body, but see things outside it, this is like a lamp placed outside a room which cannot light what is in it. So he said that, just like how the light is then placed outside, then it won't be able to light what's inside the room, isn't it? That's very clear. I have no doubt about it now. This is the teaching of the Buddha. I am completely clear. I have no doubt about the teaching of the Buddha. Am I right? I've already found the true teaching and the true meaning of the Buddha. I'm clearly sure. The lamp is outside of the body. So he said that while since we we do not see what's inside our body, then I can see what's outside the body, isn't it? Then it shows that it must be that our mind is outside of our body. So Ananda said that I'm so happy I finally got what the Buddha said. I am the most supreme disciple of the Buddha. I've already gained all the supreme and profound teaching of the Buddha. And then at that time, the Buddha said, Ananda, said that do not be so proud of yourself, okay, Ananda? So the Buddha said, well, if all the bhikshus followed me to Shravasti, the city of Shravasti, to beg for food. So the Buddha said that, hold on, Ananda. Wait a minute. Let me ask you another question. Now, if all the bhikshus follow me, all my assembly follow me to the city of Shravasti to beg for the food, have now returned to Jetavana Park. At first, they usually would walk to beg for alms, and then they will come back to their Jetavana Park, and then all the Sangha members would eat or take their meals together, and then they would wash and so on, take all those rituals. So he said that I have taken my meal. So I've taken my meal, but as one bhikshu is still eating. Is the whole community well fed then? Ananda said that, no, that's impossible. If only one bhikshu is full, and then how could the rest of the assembly all full? That's not possible. So Ananda replied right away, saying, no, world honored one. Though there are huts, they're great arhats. They're great. They've already attained great realization, but they have not the same body or lifespan. They're different living beings. Ananda, Mahakashyapa, and different great arhats, such as Puruna. How could they be all full if only one of them have taken food? It's not possible, right? The Buddha said that if your knowing mind is outside of your body, the two are separate. Since you said that mind is outside of your body, and then in such a way your mind and body are separate, isn't it? Then what your mind feels and what your body feels are completely separate as well, shouldn't it be? So he asked this question. If they're separate, if they are other than each other, the mind and body, if they are other than each other, that's when your mind knows something, your body should not feel it, and when your body feels something, your mind should not be aware of it. Just as Shariputra and Madhgalyayana, they are two different people. They are two different mind streams. They have two different minds. What Madhgalyayana sees is different than what Shariputra sees, isn't it? But if the mind and body are separate, if their minds and bodies are all separate, then they cannot communicate with one another. So it is definitely not outside of the body, because if the mind is outside of the body, then they're separate. Then they're one and other. They're in such kind of relationship rather than connected. So Ananda said, so at that time, then the Buddha showing the tula cotton hand, which is very gentle and soft hand. Our hands are rather quite hard and stiff. When I went to Samye temple,
然后他给我
and
加持了一下，我
at that
花了好
time,
长时间。
the current Karmapa blessed me with his hand and patted me on my head. I felt that it hurt me quite a bit. So his hand was not Tula cotton hand at all.
他也是这样。
Around the 90s, the Panchen Lama,
雍和宫，就是雍和宫。
Panchen Lama, when he was at Yunhe Palace, the previous Panchen Lama, he also patted us. He also blessed us by patting our heads, and it was also hurted my head quite a bit. Maybe they have a cotton hand, but the way how we perceived it was rather quite hard. Anyhow, the Buddha said that now I show you my gentle, soft Tula cotton hand. When your eyes see it, does your mind discern it? According to Abhidharma, the physical eyes or the physical faculty, the faculties, in fact, has the senses as well as the physical faculties. And over here, it shows that if your eyes see it through the eye faculty, then does your mind discern it? This is quite interesting. And then Ananda replied, yes, world honored one, my mind discerns it. And then Ananda is a bit confused. He's about to go through the second round. And then the Buddha said, if so, how can your mind be outside your body? If your eyes could see it, your mind could discern it, then your body and mind are connected rather than what you said, because the way you presented is that your mind and body are separate. But now, since you can feel it as well as discern it, you can see it, and your mind could discern it, then that shows your contention is wrong. So, therefore, your contention that your knowing and discerning mind is outside your body is groundless. The way you presented it is that the two arhats, minds and body, are separate, but the way by your contention, in fact, it doesn't happen. If your contention was right, then you will not be able to perceive the two aspects, both seeing it as well as discerning it. So the Buddha pointed out it is neither inside, and now the Buddha pointed out it is not outside of your body either. This is clearly stated by the Tathagata. This is the second pointing out of finding the mind. So Ananda and the Buddha has rather different kinds of relationship, but when we are studying, when we are studying the Vajrayana teachings, looking at the 5 poisons, or looking at where the mind is. In fact, I think this year I've been given quite profound teachings. I feel like I'm a blind leading the blind. According to the Avatamsaka Sutra, it says that a blind who is holding the lamp could also guide the path to the ones who are searching the way. Just as how a deaf is making sounds by leading the other people, but other people could hear it, although the ones who are deaf cannot hear it.
翻成这个汉语
I've
的时
been
候呢，包括
given
现在
quite
有很
profound
多
teachings.
人的这个估
I've
计啊，就是虽然
translated
并不是
lots
什
of
么
the
这个
profound
国王和
teachings
大臣
into
来
Chinese.
宣布就是惩罚，但实
And
际上呢，就是有很多人的
because of my translation and my propagation of the Vajrayana teaching and profound teachings, I was attacked and scolded by many people. But I myself don't really care about it too much because I feel that I am studying at the same time as teaching and sharing this profound knowledge with all of you. And as long as those of you who are attaining it, who have this opportunity to studying and practicing it, do not lose the
有些
opportunity.
人呢，就是因为就是你虽然去了，但是呢，因为你当时喝醉了，或者是什么原因，就没有
There are
弄到那一
people
份
who
也许会不会有点可惜？所以呢， 至 少也
I
是
think
自己
since
别
you
人
have the
能做出来的
opportunity,
这一
if
份，自
you
己
miss
也
this
得到的
opportunity,
也
it
许
would be
是
such
好
a
的
pity.
体验较大。
It is best to receive as much as you can.
所能得以当切自本念，多能你别转难怕些，结干难起让龙这把，这本从能